Hello my friends, so welcome to this episode of Wicca 2.0. So one of the things I wanted to talk about today is ritual and how to create ritual, and not just create ritual, but actually create a ritual that people can participate in and also has meaning to it and has depth to it. And people will walk away from that ritual feeling like they participated in a good pagan ritual. So please stick around. First of all, you want to have a ritual purpose. What is the purpose of the ritual? Is it a seasonal festival? Is it a rite, such as a wedding, a hand fasting, a coming of age, a funeral, a birth, a divorce? These various things that people will perform a ritual for, called a rite or rite of passage. The other is another purpose. I should have mentioned this earlier. In particular, this particular video, I'm going to be using an actual ritual that I wrote as a way of following along. And you can download that off my website, which will be here. And it is a PDF. It is called the Spring Equinox. And you can download that and watch the video, and you can kind of follow along of how I put that together and what elements were included. So the next part is creating the ritual. What you want to do is you want to base it on certain god forms or deities. For example, the ritual that you downloaded, the Spring Equinox, the gods are Lugh, Nuada, and Danu. There's reference material. In particular, this example, the ritual that I wrote, is the story of Lugh's arrival to the hill of Tara. The other part is the actual writing of the ritual. So we want to have a ritual purpose. What is it? Is it a seasonal? Is it a celebration of the spring equinox? Is it a rite of passage? Is it an initiation? Or is it a new beginning or something else to that effect? Next thing is you want to create the ritual based off of something, like let's say some kind of deities, mythology, legend, story, something that you can create it to. You don't necessarily have to create it and leave it to this, but it definitely will give you a nice guideline for it. The next thing, is it going to be a private ritual or is it going to be a public ritual? If it's a private ritual for just yourself, if you are solitary, then a lot of these elements will just need to be done by you, and you have much more control over everything. If it is going to be a group ritual, let's say between 3 and 13 people, you probably want to have most people, or if not all people, somehow participate in the ritual. People like to participate in the ritual. Next is large groups, which is going to be kind of a special category. But large groups mean 13 or more. You're not going to be able to get everybody involved. So when you are creating a ritual on a grand scale, there's other things that you have to think about. But definitely you want to think about how many people will be participating in the ritual. If there's a way that you can have people participate in certain parts of the ritual. One good thing to remember is the opening, the beginning of the ritual. If this is a opening or beginning that is fairly known, and especially say the Wicca community, based upon most commonly known Wicca rituals, then you can anticipate that some percentage of your audience is going to be familiar with that part. So you could ask for volunteers, or maybe select somebody before the ritual to participate in it. And chances are they're going to feel comfortable because basically they can just kind of do it the way that they usually do. They don't have to have the script of the ritual or any particular insight into it. They'll know how to sense with incense, or walk around in a circle and sense people, or call the directions, stuff like that. So the next part of it is the elements of the ritual. And now this is the real core of the ritual. So the elements of the ritual, you may want to have a grounding, an introduction where you would go around, let's say, for example, if it was a large group where you would go around and you would kind of explain the ritual to people or give people an idea of what is going to happen, engaging them so that they feel like they are involved and they're not just standing off on the sidelines, just, you know, observing it, but they're actually a part of it. They can relate to it. They can identify with it. The other thing is the positioning of the people. So you want to think about the ritual, how it is going to play out, how it is going to happen, and you want to think about the position of the people. If somebody needs to do something over here and one person is standing way over here who's supposed to be doing it, they have to go all the way over here to do that. So you might want to have that person positioned closer to it. So you want to think about positions and people moving during the ritual. If there's going to be one or two people moving around, who's going to be where, who needs to be close to the altar, who needs to be close to the east or the north or the south or the west or whatever. So think about positioning is one really good element for any group, if it's a large group or a small group. Next thing is props and tools. For example, the spring equinox, the important props are a chalice, a spear, and cords. So you want to think about what props. Is somebody going to be holding a chalice? Is somebody going to be holding a sword? Is somebody going to be holding a wand? Is somebody else going to be holding a book or what? So you want to take that into account. If that is an element in your ritual, you want to think about that, and definitely the day of the ritual, definitely bring that prop. Locations. So this is kind of like positioning, but maybe you want to think about locations of various people for various things. Like you also want to think when you're setting up the ritual, which direction is which direction. Is it the person speaking towards a street, or are they speaking towards trees, or are they speaking towards water, or whatever it is, so that you can take that into account and possibly move the position of your ritual to kind of take into account the environment around you. And lastly, just these are kind of the basics: colors, incense, decorations. For example, if you look at the spring equinox, the colors are predominantly yellow and orange for that particular ritual. Next, we're going to be getting to writing the ritual. So let's just back up here and think about what we've done so far. Ritual purpose. What is the purpose of it? Is it a seasonal ritual or what? Creating the ritual. What is it based on? What is the reference material? How are we going to write this ritual? Is it going to be public? Is it going to be private? Is it going to be for a solitary, small group, large group? What are the elements of this particular ritual? We have to think about that, possibly jot down these notes, positioning, think about all these things. Now we're getting to the point where we're actually going to write the ritual and write it all out. Who's going to say what? When are they going to say it? What does it mean? What is the purpose of it? All of these things, how does it fit in with something else? You want to make sure when you're writing the ritual that it has a meaning, it has a flow, so that when you've written it all out, it's an allegory, or it's a story, it's a play, it's something that is going to have a meaning, so that it's just not a bunch of random elements slapped together. Because if it is, it's not going to make any sense and it's going to confuse people. So you want to have it be cohesive and telling a story. If it's going to be, say, allegorical based, symbolically based, or is it going to be sort of like a play? Definitely for writing a ritual, you want to have symbolism. Analogous, for example, the spring equinox is about the arrival of the sun god. A play, for example, this particular ritual, the spring equinox, is based on Lugh's arrival to Tara, to the hill of Tara. Observant. So you want to think about who is observing the ritual and what are they going to read what are they going to see into it? And you also want to have a certain level of involvement. Again, this goes back to if you have a large audience, trying to get some people into the ritual, which can be difficult if you think about it, because you spend so much time before planning the ritual and then actually going to the place to perform the ritual. It can be difficult to sort of pull somebody out of the audience and get them involved without them having an understanding of what it is. But if there are certain parts of the ritual, again, that you can assume they would probably be familiar with, or maybe something that they can do where they can have some involvement, it helps. Paganism is not, and when I'm talking about paganism in this context, I'm definitely focusing on, say, witchcraft in this particular context. But it is not a observant, passive religion. It is not the type of thing where people go on a Sunday morning and they listen to the high priest up in the front talking about all the stuff and reading from a book, and then you go home. That's not it at all. Everybody who is present should feel like they have the opportunity to participate and be involved in it, because it is very much a hands-on type of activity. All right, okay, so again, we want to be able to have meaning to the ritual. We want it to be able to be read, so that if somebody looked at the entire ritual, it would read, there would be some kind of a story to it. In my opinion, that is one of the core elements of a good ritual. And next, the ritual outline. We want to have preparation. Preparation before the ritual. What are you going to need? What are you going to bring to it? Make sure you have everything in one spot when you go to the location, so that you have all of the elements that you need. You have the water, you have the salt, you have the incense, you have the props, you have the scripts. Bring extra scripts. Have the opening. The opening could be just an announcement, or it could be an actual pre-ritual before the actual ritual, then maybe an announcement. The ritual itself, a closing, and then an end to the ritual. So you want to have highlighted parts of the script. So you would have your script, and each person has a copy of their own script, and highlight which parts they'll need to pay attention to. If there's stage directions and words and actions, so that they'll know, and also context for it, so that when somebody else finishes, they know that it is their line, and then it goes on. And if they do speak a line and do something, it is specific in the script, so they'll know, okay, so I say this and I do that. So you also want your participants to be able to visualize it themselves and know what's going on. And also you want the participants, the audience, to know exactly what's going on, so they can easily visualize it too. So now, reenactment. So one of the other core things you want to do is when you've planned the ritual, you've written out the ritual, you've gotten the scripts, you've gotten your characters, your props, you've gotten everything, play it out. Play out the ritual, have people go through the motions, reenact it. This definitely helps a great deal. Even when you're planning it in your mind, maybe use coins or chess pieces and move them around and see how it's going, so you can visualize it yourself and see how the movements go, how it flows. Is somebody tripping over somebody else, or do you have a whole clump of people over here for really no reason, or how is it? So having little chess pieces or coins, again, can help you to sort of get a broader perspective of everything and where people should be. You definitely want to have a rehearsal. Have people go through the motions, do it, do what they're going to do, hold what they're going to hold, go through all these things so they feel comfortable with it. But also it will help you to get the flow, so that when you go and you do the actual ritual, that people are comfortable with it. They're not stumbling over their words, or forget to do this or forget to do that. Do a dry run. Go ahead and perform the ritual beforehand, so that everybody can see how it goes. use stand-ins. So, for example, if you are waiting upon one person, have somebody who can stand in for them. Or if you are missing a certain person in your group, that you can pull somebody out of the audience and say, hey, so-and-so didn't show up. Would you be willing to do this for us? And so, but definitely think about if it's going to be a large ritual, have somebody as a backup or stand-in. Time. How long is this ritual? Is it a very quick ritual? Is it going to be over in 5 minutes? Is it going to go on for more than an hour or hour and a half? Think about time. People, especially when they're standing around observing something, their patience is going to wear thin. I think a good ritual is probably around a half an hour long, but again, it also depends upon other factors. Sometimes a ritual can go very quickly, sometimes it can go fast, but time is definitely a factor. You definitely want to think about that. If you're renting the space and you've rented it for only an hour or 2 hours, you definitely want to have time for people to gather and assemble, relax, practice, do the ritual, end the ritual, everybody be able to socialize for a little while and feel comfortable and not rushed. When you're addressing rituals for a large event, there are some special things to think about. One of them is the pronouncement. Before the ritual, give a pronouncement of what is going to happen, and this helps people to kind of get into the frame of mind of what the ritual is about. Because the opening part will be familiar, again, you can pull people from the outside to participate in it. But definitely with a large group, you want to try and get other people engaged in it as much as you can. There are people who don't want to get involved. They would just rather just stand there and observe, and that's okay. But if there are people who say, hey, I'd like to be involved, or maybe before the ritual you were speaking with somebody and they want to participate in it, figure out maybe on the fly some way that they can do some element of the ritual. Have extra scripts. So this is another important thing. Somebody asked me a question about scripts versus memorization, and I would say that for the core element of a ritual, you're going to memorize it over time. Definitely you want to memorize it. I don't know, there may be people who have every single ritual memorized by heart. If they do, that's fantastic. I'm not one of those people. I have to have a script, especially for a Sabbat ritual, spring equinox, rite of passage, or whatever. But definitely you want to make sure that everybody has a script, and again, if necessary, you have extra scripts so that somebody can step in and be a part of it and maybe take over somebody else's lines for whatever it is that they're doing. So you want to have extra scripts just in case. Okay, so now performing the ritual. And these are things you might want to delegate. Now, don't be afraid to delegate things to people. This is an important aspect of it. Delegating is not you being the boss telling people what to do. It's giving them an opportunity to become involved. Because there are other things, especially when you're doing a large outdoor ritual or a ritual in a building or another place where you have to go to the ritual. There are some elements that we need to think of, and that is scheduling. So we want to make sure that everybody's going to be available for that day. If somebody says, hey, I might be able to be available, I might not, depending upon what happens, have a fallback person. Location. Where is it going to take place? Venue and the size. Is it going to be in a building? If so, how much room do you have in that building? Is it going to be in a park? If it's going to be in a park, where in the park? Do you have enough space for people to gather? Is it going to be a problem? Are you going to have enough space? Weather. You want to think about if you're going to be holding a Samhain ritual in October, November, what's the weather going to be like? Is it going to be raining? Is it going to be clear? What's going to happen? Permits. You definitely, if it's going to be an outdoor ritual, you want to check with your local officials, get the necessary permits. If you're going to have a fire pit, whatever, you want to make sure that you have your permits. Times. definitely you want to say, okay, we're going to arrive at 3 o'clock and we're going to have the ritual at 4 o'clock. We're going to finish it up at 5 or 6 or whatever. But you want to have how much time you need, thinking about setup before the ritual after the ritual, and then the final cleanup and getting everybody out of the area. And finally, the very last thing, anticipate problems. Just get it in your mind that something's going to happen, somebody's not going to show up, some group is going to show up to protest, somebody's going to forget this, somebody's not going to, just whatever it is, just anticipate you are going to have problems. One of the things that this is going to do is that if you anticipate a problem, when problems happen, you're not going to melt down. You are going to understand that this just happens and work around it. Nothing is going to go off perfectly fine. Something is going to happen. The sprinklers are going to go off at the wrong time. Something is going to happen and it's going to mess up your whole ritual, but only if you let it mess up your ritual. So, I hope this was beneficial. I hope this gives you some insight or some inspiration to create your own rituals. I think that is one of the best elements, and it's one of the things that I've enjoyed doing, is being able to create rituals and to think about those. And I hope you enjoy. Thank you so much, and blessed be.